morning, everybody. It's Friday, July 9th. I'm Charlie Fink with my friend Ted Schilowitz, Futurist at Viacom CBS. You know me from my Forbes column. It's This Week in XR. We took last week off because it was the 4th of July. It wasn't a very deep news week, but we did bring forward a story about it. But Ted, how was your 4th of July? What did you do?
It was good. I was down in Coronado Island. I did not bring my VR gear with me for the first time in a long time. We went surfing and boogie boarding and spent some beach time. Before that, I was on a exotic island in the Bahamas, and I did bring my VR and my Magic Leap stuff with me with some of the people we were sort of working with and experimenting with some interesting stuff, and put one of the staff on the island into VR for the first time, which was one of the most pleasurable experiences of my life, to watch him literally lose his mind, because these are folks that don't have an easy touch to technology. It's pretty remote where we were. And it was kind of fascinating to watch him go completely bonkers over this stuff. So that was the last few weeks of my life.
So this week, I don't want to do the news in order because just for entertainment value, I'm not going to go from the most prestigious to the...
We're going to mix it up a little bit.
We'll mix it up a little bit because you mentioned Magic Leap.
Yes, I did.
The two former Magic Leap engineers in Israel, I guess one of them was a VP, so fairly senior level people from Magic Leap, and they've raised $27 million as a seed round. The company is called Multinarity.
And that's all we know, right, so far.
They will not tell anybody what they do.
Right.
Is it a product? Is it software? What is it? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Not even me. Sometimes does a little bit of an inside track on these things. I don't know.
did say on social media, well, they're not going to make much of a hardware device for $27 million.
That's 100% correct.
So, well, at least we'll remember that, if nothing else. Wrote a story this week on Matterport. You know what's going on with Matterport?
They're first of all, they're making money, right? Significantly making money.
They're going to make $130 million.
And it is absolutely part of this broad, overreaching term of the metaverse and understanding how to capture objects and bring them into.
Well, their story is right. They're capturing the interior world,
right,
or what they call the built universe,
right,
while Google and Apple are capturing the external world.
Right.
And of course, they have an additional advantage because what they're doing is with the permission and often
correct,
the ownership of the property owners.
Correct.
Whereas, Niantic is running around scanning every place, but it's not totally clear that it's legal for them to use it.
Yeah, but they are living in the SPAC world, or the special purpose vehicle world for investment, which is kind of a fascinating
they're going.
point.
I had to, in writing my story about Metaverse, I had to learn what a SPAC was. So a special acquisition company goes public as just a pile of cash. So $600 million of cash, I go public as SPAC 600, and I'm publicly traded $600 million pile of cash. And I have 2 years to merge with a real company.
Right. Welcome to the future of finance.
Hello, Matterport. Matterport, is a real company. They've been around for a long time. They could go public. They've had, consistent revenue now in the, hundreds of millions of dollars. So, they're a great SPAC candidate. They'd also could have gone public, which I guess is just expensive and time consuming. And it would have had to do another round of funding to get there. So rather than take the normal 2-year path, they're just, did a SPAC in 6 months. They come into a tremendous amount of cash in this deal. Yeah. There's no way the company has anywhere near this kind of money on hand. So it should change them into a PTC-like company with multiple lines of business. So,
right. And as you know, Charlie, it feels like one of my missions on the podcast is always to point out another smaller upstart company with much less financial capital right now that may be entering the space and doing something interesting and important. And there's a little group called Virtual Apartment. We could actually have the founder on as a guest one day. They are doing some really interesting stuff too, with a fully robotic camera that moves around spaces and then does a game engine overlay to add elements to it. And I'm a big fan of that company. So I really like what Matterport is doing. They've become very successful. And I think they've spawned a lot of interest in this space. So I'm always about finding these ones that are kind of next horizon that we talk about a lot on the show.
Well, this whole idea of capturing space rather than a flattened 2D version of it, I think is extremely compelling and going to be very transformative. Although again, it's early. So, but I just think that in the future, pictures are not going to be flattened versions.
Yeah, this is a belief structure that you and I have had for a long time, which is why I'm invested in volumetric capture technology and always thinking about what is beyond the plane that we live on today primarily, which is of course why we're interested in VR and MR as the output device. But the input of all that is, number one, starting to become big business now in the hundreds of millions of dollars and eventually billions of dollars. So we're studying how big these enterprise cases are, and they're quite robust.
So OSO VR, our friend Justin Barad, I believe he has been on this show, has just raised 27 million, making his total haul 43 million. His goal is nothing less than teaching surgeons how to operate on virtual patients.
Correct.
And it is driven, he's an orthopedic surgeon. Well, he's actually, here's the great thing about Justin. He was a game designer who went to medical school.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, exactly.
Right. So if there was anybody who was going to see the flaws in medical education and come up with gamification to solve them, it was going to be Justin.
Right.
And he has pursued this vision relentlessly. I've known the guy for 6 years, right when he got started. I think that was one of my first Forbes stories, was his seed round. And he's a very smart and passionate and personable guy, who personally uses the product, right? His complaint in medical school was, this is freaking terrifying. I stand next to a guy for a couple of procedures and then he hands me the knife. And he goes, okay, I'm pretty observant, but
yeah, but are you really ready to do that yet? Yeah.
The statistics for his first 100 orthopedic her surgeries were not quite what they are right now.
Yeah, sooner or later,
when I went to have my
dive into the pool, right?
Right. When I went to have my hip replaced, the first thing I said to the guy was, "How many of these have you done?" He said, 5,000. I said, "Okay, you're hired."
Right, you're fine. Yeah. And I think on this show, we mentioned a couple of times that I'm on the board of a very large cancer research center in Florida called the Moffitt Center. And a big part of my discussions with them is simulations of all types, creating the use cases for how do we train and how do we even train patients to be ready to accept what's happening.
Surgery simulation, when you say it to people, it's like, doesn't that already exist?
But not at the maturity level that we all
really
want.
Not really, but it's happening. And so good on OSO VR. Justin Barad, I look forward to telling the story of him becoming a unicorn, because I do think this is the sort of thing that it's going to happen.
And this is a very important part of our future. That
this is happening.
Are going to teach doctors to do better. Yeah.
And also there are so many tech companies in the medical field right now. There's another company called Fundamental Surgery. They give you haptic feedback when you're cutting open a virtual cadaver. So, this stuff is really happening, and it's going to change medical education.
Absolutely.
For sure. So before we get to our guest, I should have mentioned we have Mike Levine with us.
Yeah.
From Happy Giant Games. We're going to be talking about the new Sam & Max VR game. But before we get to that, probably the fun story of the July 4th weekend, although my wife calls it a nightmare. In the middle of my Instagram feed, what do I have on Saturday but Mark Zuckerberg holding an American flag, barely on keeping his balance on a hydrofoil on some kind of a lake. And it's a tracking shot, so it's shot from a follow boat, probably with his brohemes on there. And it's shot from a follow boat, and it's scored with John Denver's, Take Me Home.
Take Me Home, Country Roads.
West Virginia, Mountain Mama, Take Me Home. So I have no idea what it means. I just feel like Mark Zuckerberg reached out through Instagram and he smacked me upside the head with every symbol he could find except for a Bible for no apparent reason. And I'm sure he has no idea what it means. I just thought he thought it was cool and it's iconic. And so, Jane, my wife, is of course infuriated. She's like, "What the hell? The guy is doing this to us on 4th of July weekend?"
Yeah.
where literally nothing was happening except baseball games and hot dogs, and he had to insert himself. And so, I mean, the first thing I said was, oh my God, Zuckerberg's running for freaking president.
Well, it'll either be him or Jeff Bezos, right?
I mean, what the hell? And Jeff Bezos, oh my God, there's this petition with 120,000 signatures encouraging him to stay in space, not to allow him back for more.
Right.
And then Richard Branson.
Yeah, Richard Branson, their little micro space race they have going on.
Not to be left out of the trifecta of billionaires behaving badly. He pushed up his space so that Bezos couldn't brag about being the first billionaire to send himself into space.
Yeah, we're Yuri Gagarin all over again.
I mean,
right?
and also, again, for what purpose and who even cares?
Right.
So,
well,
I mean, Mark
we care enough to laugh about it and talk about it. So it's clearly stimulating enough that
Mark is, the thing that's scary about Mark is that he is so unheeding of unintended consequences, even after everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And, by the way, I mean, West Virginia, I mean, yeah, it was a kind of a red state, kind of red meat kind of thing, unless you think about the actual real life relationship of Mark Zuckerberg and West Virginia.
True. Yeah,
which I'm pretty sure is not much of a thing. So anyway, with all of that said, I mean, you can only shake your head and say, oh my God, this story just keeps getting better and better, and you could not make this shit up, Ted.
Yeah, it's welcome to the world that we live in now. Where,
so from the ridiculous to the sublime, let's bring in our guest, Mike Levine. We love him, we know him. Sam and Max is the game of the moment coming out on Oculus Quest today. Mike Levine, we are so excited to have you here. As promised, our guest today is Michael Levine. He's the CEO and founder of Happy Giant Games, the publisher of Sam and Max. This time it's virtual, coming to the Quest today, and I guess PSVR and other platforms soon to follow. Congratulations, Mike.
Yeah, congratulations, Michael. Way to go.
Thank you. It's been a fun long haul.
We're getting you at the end of your press day, right? You're just exhausted and talked out.
Yes, I've talked to a lot of people, and you're the best for last. So, but yeah, it's also coming. It's coming out for Steam VR also first, sometime this summer, and then we've stated publicly PSVR early 2022. But we're trying our best to beat that.
Well, I love the game. I did not know Sam and Max as a PC game. I guess it is much beloved. And you guys know about it, but it was new to me. I thought it was hilarious. The writing is terrific. It's consistently surprising. The art direction is fantastic. It's not a regular video game. So, congrats on that. Congrats to the team for taking something that is so old and making it feel so fresh and new.
Thanks. No, thanks. And we've read that in some reviews, and it's really satisfying to hear that, because we did sort of, we didn't make a traditional VR game, if there is such a thing. We took a lot of risks, and we wanted to make sure the old school Sam and Max fans loved it, of course, because if they didn't like it, what did we have? But it was very new to them, at the same time being in VR. It's not a traditional Sam and Max game like they were used to, but we were sort of omnipresent that a huge amount of VR users have never heard of Sam and Max, and we wanted to make a game that was accessible to most people and kind of, ramped up in intensity as you went into it. That was our goal.
Yeah, it's kind of adorable and lovable and sparky and fun in interesting ways. I'm curious, as we compare the genres and compare the different kind of work, if you're a fan of the Trover Saves the Universe VR game, if you had a chance to play that, because that's kind of like a close analog to what you're doing. So for people that are interested in that type of story-driven, but kitschy and fun and really kind of making fun of the genre at the same time. So
it was definitely one of the games we looked at the beginning. And I mean, gameplay-wise, it's very different. And even the comedy,
it's different.
Marty Trover is totally different, but it is when you step back and look at the VR landscape, it is similar to it in ways.
Yeah.
And like Job Simulator, like I read a review that said this game is like Job Simulator or Vacation Simulator as an adventure game, which I thought was pretty cool to say. And I'm friends with Alex, who started Job Simulator, and so that he was a big influence on us from the beginning. And you know, I love Trover, but unlike Trover, we really wanted to make something that was native to VR. And that is a sacrifice, because when you do that, it makes it a lot harder to bring it to flat platforms, to people who don't have VR. And we really wanted to lean into what VR was good at. And the only way we saw to do that was, you know, to put you right in the middle of it all.
Yeah, it's a really difficult task to take something that already has a beloved fan following in the two-dimensional console PC universe and migrate it into this three-dimensional immersive landscape. I would probably say, you know, maybe it'd be interesting to get your comments on this too. The most successful attempt at that I've seen that I thought really actually achieved it was Superhot, that migrated well from the understanding of what it meant to be here versus what it means to be here, you know, in a surround universe. So.
I'd never played the 2D version, so I don't even know. I think I did know it existed, but I definitely think of it as a VR title. And
it feels very VR. I think it was a very obvious choice, but you know, Charlie and I love talking to people that are off creating and building these worlds, because we still feel like we're just at the very beginning of this journey, you know, that there's so much more coming. And those that are out there at this stage of the game are really the pioneers still. So
Mike, tell us the story of the VR experience and how it came to be.
Right?
This famous franchise, was this your idea? Somebody else's idea? How long did it take? Who put up the dough?
Sure. I mean, first of all, as you know, we've been in the XR space for a long time, mainly in AR, but we had done VR stuff before this. We brought our HoloGrid game to the Gear VR, and we had worked with Oculus before. Fast forward, I'd lost a lot of faith, as you know, in mobile AR games, right? There was just no there. After working with Niantic, pushing it as far as we could, sort of look, and then, you know, honestly at AWE, I think 3 years ago, whatever, I tried the Quest 1, and I was really like, and I loved VR before that, but the tether always bothered me. And once I tried the Quest, I was like, you were probably 5 feet away from me when I tried it, but I was kind of like, okay, this is going to go mainstream now. And we started to just feel, you know, seeing revenue happen. We heard Oculus was funding titles, and we're like, okay, let's pitch them something. And somehow Sam and Max percolated to my head, probably because I have paintings of them around my office. And I'd always stayed in touch with Steve Purcell, the creator. And a lot of people don't know this or realize it, but it's the one sort of LucasArts IP from that era, you know, Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, but it was the one LucasArts IP that LucasArts didn't own. It was a license deal. Steve is very independent like us, and he's always maintained control. That's why Telltale were able to do their games. And so we were able to, I'd always been friends with Steve. Backing up, I worked on Hit the Road, the 30 years ago. So this whole thing is pretty weird and crazy and fun, just working on an IP that I really was the first full game I worked on at LucasArts.
Yeah, wow, that is great. Like coming home.
Yeah. And you know what I did, I'm not taking remotely the credit. I went really back to the LucasArts formula, and luckily I've stayed friends with a lot of these guys over the years. So I called Peter Chan, who's a dear friend of mine, and he's sort of a legendary concept artist who did all those games at LucasArts, and he just happened to have time. It was one of these things. Mike Stemley, who wrote Hit the Road and also worked on the Telltale games, he was available. And Steve also, very, you know, he's very busy, works at Pixar, but he was able to chime in a lot. So anyways, we did a demo early on. We got some funding from Oculus, and then we got co-funding from HTC and others, and had to put a lot of our own blood, sweat, and tears into it. We definitely did not have a giant VR budget to make this. This is definitely an indie game, but we made something pretty big, you know. for the VR space. You know, I saw some people criticizing like, oh, well, for a Sam and Max adventure game, which is 14 to 18 hours, it's short. But for a VR game, most of them are 2 to 3 hours. We made something more.
How much is the game?
$29.99, and it's about a 4 to 6 to 7 hour experience, depending on how.
Yeah, that's plenty robust for VR. That's multiple sessions in VR, as far as I'm concerned.
And you know, I personally, we looked at the VR landscape, and there's a lot of great stuff, but like we felt like there was something missing. There weren't a lot of games like Trover that had a story, and that also we wanted to play something that kept you guessing. Like that was the core of those old adventure games. Like every scene, it was just a new thing, a new challenge to overcome. And that was kind of at the core of what we built. We wanted to keep, you know, you play one part of it and it's like, you move on to the next and it's just completely different. You know, you go from an obstacle course to bomb diffusing an animatronic head of Thomas Edison. So it's just all over the place.
Did Purcell write the script?
Nope. Mike Stemley wrote the majority of it. I helped a little. Steve did help. I mean, he definitely contributed with lines and jokes, but Stemley was the main writer. As he
such a good job of capturing the spirit of the franchise.
He's incredible.
And the banter of the characters. And usually, you know, the characters inside of a simulation addressing you is beyond lame. But somehow it's done with so much panache here that it works. You know, it's just sort of like sheer like energy and enthusiasm sweeps you along. But you know, it's very hard to do that. I mean, they did it in Vader Immortal, but you know, that's Darth Vader.
Right. So Mike, I'm curious, since you've been doing press all day and they probably asked a lot of the same questions, I'll try and ask a different question. What's next? What are you thinking about now that you got this one out into the world?
Oh boy, sleep. No.
There you go. Good answer.
I mean, we have a lot of ideas ranging in the XR space to out of it. There's a lot of exciting things going on in games right now. A lot's going to depend on, we'll see how well this game does and how it's received. We'd love to take some of the other LucasArts IP into this space. If we did it again, we'd love to figure out a way that, you know, maybe it's easier to make VR and flat versions. But as VR keeps growing, maybe that will be less of a need too. You know, I mean, I'm hopeful of the future too. Well, you know, if Apple comes out with something that's going to blow. As big as VR
is, you know, it is still the beginning of the beginning. You know, and so I look at Rec Room, and what has caused Rec Room to really explode and become a unicorn is not VR, it's game consoles and mobile. And
social fabric, right? And this social connection.
But most of the users, or even the VR users, are on game consoles.
Right, are doing it in
and so I think that taking Sam and Max, this time it's virtual, onto those platforms will bring a whole new life to the franchise. So I think it's great. Quest is great. Obviously, you know, we're here for the VR.
Yeah.
But you got to go to where the people are, which is on mobile and console. And I think they'll appreciate the, you know, tremendous creative effort you guys have put forward on any platform. Just good storytelling, larger than life characters. It's the things that people loved about the franchise all along. And, you know, of course, you did it with, you know, terrific, you know, different applications of VR to, you know, surprise us and challenge us. For me, it was just challenging enough because I'm not a gamer, right? So here was a game that totally satisfied me. That could actually be bad news for you, Mike, if it totally satisfies Charlie.
Well, yeah, it's interesting reading the reviews, and it's interesting. Like, I think it's something that's different in the VR space than bigger games, if you think about it, right? Because like in VR, the people reviewing these games, they really, for the most part, they're VR pros, right? They've been doing this for a few years, and a huge part of the VR audience right now, and we saw this in our external testing, they're really new to this,
right?
You know, and that's not necessarily true in normal gaming, right? Like people are reading reviews, they're gamers, they play
Yeah.
games, it's closer relationship. So that gap is interesting. And
Yeah.
like, you know, like Tony Scarred Ghost, who I love, who did a great review on it, and I love him, and he's so
And
honest.
so did Nathy. Nathy gave you
Yeah.
a great review.
Yeah.
And that guy's a gamer's gamer.
That's true. I was gonna say, like, how Tony, like he said, like some things in it were simple to him, but he called himself out in the review and said, but you know what? I am like a VR pro. I've climbed 1,000 walls in VR. So we definitely are straddling that line where we wanted it to appeal to newbies, but yeah, it's not population one, you know,
Right.
it's not that kind of a game.
And I read some press just today on the news front about the very robust continued sales of Quest 2 that are hopping into very high millions now. To your point of, you know, those are not all super enthusiasts like you, me, and Charlie, or people in the press or people working on stuff.
They could sell 15 million of those things this year.
This is starting to get into, you know, the
15 million is
it's
funny. I think that sales of the Quest are actually affecting PlayStation. They're selling more of them. So, you know, they've created a lot more interest around VR generally. So I think we could be in a position where we're sitting here this time next year looking at 30 million headsets out there.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and as we read, they've put a lot of money into that.
Yes,
so,
it cost them a lot of money, but they make $20 billion a year. So they're not going to
they
miss
can
it.
afford it. They
9 or
can
10,000 employees working on something. That's a significant amount of costing, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Michael,
Michael,
it's the end of your day. I told you we wouldn't keep you that long.
No, it's okay.
We've already gone, you know, a tremendously long 15 minutes talking about surgical simulation and Mark Zuckerberg.
I just have one more question before you go.
It's
Are you as bullish as you have been on the mixed reality future, bringing these objects into a transparent or semi-transparent world and creating gameplay that way, or has your tone changed a little bit over the last?
Tony, Charlie Fink knows how I think about this. I mean, I'm as bullish as I ever was. Like when I walked into Magic Leap, you know, 8 years ago, I'm as bullish as I am then. Here's the difference. I've become much more realistic about the time frame.
Me too.
And until we have a device that's mass market that can deliver that to people, that's when like
I have the same problem with this whole conversation about the metaverse. I mean, just the form factor has not been settled yet. And until we, you know, start to be in that place, it's really, you're making like 3 or 4 steps ahead in the metaverse, you know, when, you know, I think we're still, you know, at the beginning of the beginning. So I think the metaverse,
totally. I was going to go there.
It's real and it's important, but good gosh, it is early because it's not going to be this.
Correct. I think those are very wise words from both of you that we can maybe sort of just take to heart, that
exactly.
A long road to the future.
Meanwhile, Sam and Max, this time it's virtual, great VR today.
Yeah, that's where we can leave it. I mean,
congratulations.
If you like games with story and variety, then and comedy and clever comedy, then I think you should check this game out.
Right.
All right. From the producer himself. Thanks everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks
we'll
again,
see you
guys.
again soon.
Thank you.